Mrs. Kramer?
Here.
Mrs. Lane?
Here.
Mrs. Rich?
Here.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Here.
Mr. Parzak?
Here.
The meeting is now open. Adequate notice of the meeting was provided by posting a copy of the time and place on the municipal clerk's bulletin board and mailing a copy of same to the press and the Cape May County Herald on January 8th, 2017. Will everyone please rise to salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First on our agenda is we have a dock hearing.
Hello.
Would you state your name, sir?
Frank Bowen.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear that you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please. The floor is yours.
So we're here to get the approval from you guys for Mr. Dent's. He's building a new house. And the state approved the bulkhead in line. They approved a ramp and float. And they approved a pier. And you guys should all have a copy of that. Pretty straightforward.
Yes.
And that's what we want to build, is exactly what's on the plan, how it shows on the plan.
Now, the existing pier is going to be reduced in size? Is that
Correct.
Could you
Down to
tell-
an 8 by
tell us about
20.
that?
It's non-conforming, I guess, now, or because, I'm not sure exactly why they made them reduce it, but they are going to take it to an 8 by 20, as it's shown on the plan. I guess it's oversized at this point.
And there's no reconstruction to the bulkhead whatsoever?
No, there's a new bulkhead going in as part of the plan, in line. So we're taking the old bulkhead out and putting the new one right in the same footprint as the old bulkhead. Reducing the size of the pier to the approved size and installing a new 3 by 16 ramp leading to a, I think it's an 8 or 6 by 21 floating dock.
Does-
Why I'm saying that is the letter that went to Channel Marine didn't say bulkhead. It said fixed pier and permit for the dock. Okay.
Mayor and council, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you guys usually get involved in the bulkhead
Kids are not.
Okay.
aspect of it. It's just what's over the water, the pier.
And the
float.
DEP approved that already?
Yeah, they did.
Thank you.
That's this.
What's the height of that bulkhead? The one you're putting in?
I think it's 1988. I've got 10 towns in my head all the time, so there's a sheet that we work off of with every town's a little bit different, but I think Stone Harbor's 1988.
It's per our ordinance, correct?
Yes. Yep.
I didn't know if you were going higher or not.
No, not in this case, we're not.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions of the applicant?
Open a public session. You want to open it to the public? At this time, we'll open the hearing to the public. If anybody wants to speak for or against the permit, you're welcome to come up. Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. So I need a motion to approve the dock permit per plans presented for 10006 Corinthian Drive.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
And now we will move on to a presentation by Atlantic City Electric. Ronnie Town, come on up.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and Borough staff. We appreciate you having us on tonight's agenda. First and foremost, I want to thank the Environmental Committee and the Green Fair Commission. They did a great job with the Green Fair, and I just want to thank everybody for all their hard work.
Well, we want to thank you for being there. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Karen. We wanted to just talk to you. I know we are talked in the past about improving our service reliability on a new distribution line last October. We had several conversations and meetings about it, and our initial distribution line route. And we listened to the feedback, and we also extended the timeline. We changed the timeline. And we also, if feasible, would develop an alternate route. We are presenting this feeder project tonight, and I would ask that we just discuss the feeder project tonight, the line itself. Any other questions? I'll be here tonight. You can ask me those questions, but we just want to really talk about the distribution line. So this evening, I'd like to introduce Dan Woods. I think most people are familiar with him. He's our senior project manager, and he is here to present our new plan. Thank you. And here's some.
Got it.
Otherwise, you got to put the sunglasses on.
Do you have any extras for me or no? Good afternoon. I'd also like to welcome Greg Domzik. He's our Cape May district engineer who designed this project and will be and is handling any future design work. So he'll be helping me out with this presentation as we go through here. So I don't want this to be a classroom session here or anything like that, but I want to make sure we're all speaking the same language. As you can see from this diagram, it's a pretty simple diagram, but what we're talking about today is a distribution project. So if you look at number 5 down there, electricity is distributed locally through power lines. So you have to go all the way back to number 1, which is a generation station, moves to a substation, which is usually those fenced-in steel areas, and they actually turn up the power, turn up the voltage, and travel along number 3, which are the transmission lines, which are normally the bigger lines. There are highways of our system and our arteries. Once those and they usually travel long distances. From there, it goes to a step-down substation, which we just completed on 60th Street in Avalon, and that's the Piermont substation. So that takes the voltage of the line back down to a level that we could start distributing it at number 5, a 12 kV system to your homes to number 6. So what this project we're discussing today is the number 5 on the system. So this is what you see, the wood poles on the street out there with the trash can looking things on them serving your homes. So just a little bit of background. So if I say feeder, that means a distribution line. If you have any questions or if I'm saying something that's you don't understand, stop me and I'll explain it. So just a little bit of project history and timeline. This is part of the Piermont project and is the last phase of it. In July of 2016, we finished the 69 kV transmission line in the Piermont substation. Now, and what is left is 2 feeders that need to be come out of that substation. So 2 distribution lines. One will be going up through Avalon, and one is coming down to Stone Harbor. And that Stone Harbor one is called the Hereford feeder. So that's what this project is called. We originally presented that project at the council meeting on October 4th, and following that, we had a public meeting to discuss the project on October 10th. And like Ronnie said, we got a lot of feedback, which was great feedback. And so we sort of took all the inputs, went back to the drawing board a little bit, and then came up with a new plan that we'll discuss today. As you can see here, just a little bit of the future timelines. The ocean feeder, we're looking to get started here in October in Avalon and finish up before the end of the year. And then the Hereford feeder, which is the project we're talking about tonight, we want to start in February and end before May. So they're the target dates that we're proposing for this project. And I'll hand it over to Greg just to go through the proposed route and some of the details of the scope.
Good afternoon. As you know, the Piermont substation is situated up on 60th Street and will, per the original plan and this plan, It's running along Dune Drive in Avalon up to Second Avenue in Stone Harbor, where it enters Stone Harbor. Right now, the proposed route, and given, again, the input we've received in earlier meetings, is going to be along Dune Drive on the east side of Dune Drive to right in front of your municipal ball fields, sporting complex, recreational area. At that point, the plan is to jump across the street, attach to the existing steel structures, and run along the steel route all the way up to between 93rd and 94th Street, where there is, I believe it's that one parking lot that's right there. That's the proposed route. You'll see a small jut, and you can see it there on the screen in red. You'll see that one run that goes up 81st Street. In order to attach to the steel poles and to support all the new tensions that exist running a wire across the street like that, we weren't able to get, at least initially, appropriate anchoring to be able to support that pole in place. The steel pole sits slightly back off of the corner. The rest of the distribution lines that are currently there sit out towards the sidewalk and the curb line itself. So we'll need to extend that line up to 3rd Avenue, in which case it also gives us an additional feeder tie. And we want that ability should we need to support that line from a different route between 60th and 80th Street, should something happen to the original line. Emergency, car accident, something of that nature that might render it incapacitated. So at that point, right now, the reason we chose some of these routes, and Dan, feel free to chime in at any time, one was to minimize impact based on what we've heard. We wanted to limit ground disturbance at this point. We wanted to use what we have there. We've made a tremendous investment. You guys recognize that, and we want to be able to use that as well. So attaching a second cross-arm deck above the existing cross-arm deck on the steel poles and stringing new line in above that, we were able to reconfigure and through doing some switching, accommodate the same response that we tried to in the original version of this, which was to separate customer load, to, instead of feeding that part of the island from mainland sources, from 2 feeders out of the new Piermont substation, we were able to now bring 3 full feeders up into Stone Harbor and distribute the load evenly among all 3 of them by choosing this route as well. Very similar to what we had when we had the First Avenue route. So that's the basis of the design.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
These cross lines, they're being attached to the standing metal poles that are there now? Is that what it's doing? You're not putting additional poles?
So as you can see, running down, I think from 80th Street going down 2nd Ave, that's where the existing steel poles are, and we would just be attaching a deck on top of those poles.
So it would be like 1, 2, 3, like
So it'd
this?
be there's one existing deck right there, there'll be another deck above it.
But
Above that is the-
no additional poles, just more wiring across?
Correct.
In
Down-
order-
yeah,
In
down
order
s-
to accommodate this, and I want to, sorry
No,
to
you're
cut you
fine.
off, but in order to accommodate this, we will not be adding any additional steel poles. When we ran the structure numbers and being able to attach to these steel poles, we recognized that we needed to add, I believe, 2 wood poles and a couple of various anchors in different places that we'll need rights for in order to make this work. There's 2 wood poles that will attach to the distribution lines only. They won't be as tall as the steel poles are. And I think they're on corner properties on a couple of the longer spans that we have. So there are 2 additional poles that will need to be installed where there isn't currently a pole right now. There is also a couple, several pole replacements in kind, maybe a little bit sturdier or stronger, going up 81st Street towards 3rd Avenue.
And those are wood poles.
And those are wood poles as well. And some of the, I think, support structures down some of the other streets where we need side anchoring to offset wind loading, things of that nature due to the second deck. So there will be some pole-for-pole replacements, but when it comes to additional poles, there's only 2 additional poles in this design.
And are they located on public property or private property?
We're in the process of identifying that right now, so we wanted to first present the path, because if the path isn't really, acceptable, or we get major pushback, we wouldn't want to pursue that, but we're in the process of pursuing that currently.
And the load from this is all from the station in Avalon at 60th Street?
Correct. So currently, right now, part of Stone Harbor and Avalon are being fed from two substations that are on the mainland. So that the goal is to have everything on the island fed out of the state-of-the-art substation out of Piermont.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Probably a silly question. How long can a distribution line go? Miles and miles and miles?
There's challenges to distribution line. The reason we transform the voltage up and down is because at higher voltages, we can go a lot further before we transition them down. Distribution lines, yes, they can go pretty far with varying equipment to be able to bolster the voltage as it goes further. But what you're adding when you go long distances with distribution lines is exposure. So if a bird comes into contact with one of the lines coming down the causeway, you'll see an effect on your island. And what we want to do is try to condense that. The shorter the runs, the less exposure to outside elements and other outage.
So in
situations.
theory, if you live next to a substation, in theory, you have less exposure to reliability issues because you don't have that physical length that if anything happens on the end of that line, then you're out of service. So it's more of like a physical exposure of length of line.
Back to my question, how long can lines go before they are connected wherever they have to be connected? I drove through Colorado and watched distribution lines go over mountains, miles and miles and miles and miles.
There's parts of our company that have 34,000 volt distribution lines, which could probably go 3 times as far as Atlantic City Electric's distribution lines, because ours run at 12,000 volts. So it's a function of the voltage and the size of the wire. In our area, typically, yeah, you could probably go, and I don't know this off the top of my head, but I've seen feeders probably in the 10-mile range, 15-mile range. Typically, they'll go and spread. But usually that's when we start running into fault current issues. That's where we have downed wires where we don't see the fault current available to be able to open up. Usually with wire falls on the ground, we want it to open up. We want it to de-energize immediately. When you run long distances on feeders, one of the phenomenons that we try to avoid and why we don't like running very long distances is we lose that fault current and have a higher potential of having down-energized conductors, which is a safety concern. But the other benefit of this route and getting everything onto the island, we do not lose the capacity on our mainland source. This becomes another backup to the island. So should something happen, we still have that mainland source right there at the bridge, ready to tie in and pick up load should it be necessary. But we saw an incremental increase. I think when we ran the numbers, it was around a 33% range of a reduction in reliability incidents as it's measured on the island itself.
So the south end is still coming from courthouse?
Currently,
Distribution,
Currently a portion of it, correctly. Yes. That's correct.
distribution.
Yeah, right past the substations, right past the Acme.
Yeah.
Big courthouse, yep.
Okay.
And that's only feeding some of Stone Harbor, not of all Stone Harbor. So there's
Right,
two other
because
feeders.
sometimes when the south end doesn't have power, the north end does.
Yes, correct. So, and just to elaborate even further, some of our worst performing feeders on our system are the long ones that go for miles. That they're usually our worst performing feeders.
How high up the poles are these platforms?
So on the new decks, so they'll be approximately, I think the existing decks are approximately about 40 feet in the air. They'll be above that, approximately about 4 or 5 feet. So right around there.
And the second deck will look identical to what's below it right now.
yes.
So the 2 new poles are wooden poles?
Correct.
Okay, and you talked about having to beef up some of the existing poles or replace some of the existing wooden poles, maybe with bigger poles. How much bigger?
That wouldn't be a significant change. Up 81st Street, we'd have to go to a 45-foot pole. most of which out there are 40s already, so it'll just be a 5-foot change. And that would be the most that we would need to do, I think, on any pole change when it comes to size increases. Any guying poles might even stay the same size, but because we need to put a little bit of tension on that pole for support purposes, we may have looked to increase the class of the pole or put a newer pole in just to get rid of something that's aged that we want to make sure has its full strength capabilities.
Is that a 5-foot average or a maximum of 5 feet in increase?
I would probably say 5 feet average. The pole length is 5 feet, but it varies in set depth to an extent. Their standard set at a 45-foot pole would be, it's 10% plus 2 for us. So it's 6.5 feet in the ground. But sometimes it's 7 feet in the ground, sometimes it's 5 feet in the ground, depending on where it gets set, what's required at that location. But they would all typically come out in that range, 38-ish feet above grade, current grade.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Greg touched on some of the benefits of the additional feeder. Again, we'll segment the customer load, which will help with the reliability on the island. Again, all the island load is coming from the Piermont substation.
Even that way?
I'm sorry?
South? Even, you say all of the island is
Yep.
getting it? So this distribution is going all the way
Correct, on the island, yep.
south
Yep,
without new wires?
without new wires. It's really tying into the existing infrastructures that's there. We just need to bring that tie into it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does now.
Okay.
Didn't before, but
Yeah,
it makes sense
okay.
now.
And then we have, like Greg said, we have some operational flexibility with some of these feeder ties. So if we have issues on the one feeder, and especially out of Piermont, which is a brand-new substation that can handle a lot of load, and a lot of that flexibility of operating, we could throw all Stone Harbor maybe on one feeder, or we can move some of this load here, move some of this load there if we have issues with a car accident or storm outages. So it really increases our flexibility in restoring customers quicker. And then we will be reusing the existing steel structures along Second Ave with the addition of the 2 proposed wood structures. And then also with reusing those structures, we're hopefully reducing the restoration process with the sidewalks and anything along there, so. That's our presentation. Like Ronnie said, we wanted to come and sort of provide our proposed route. Obviously, we will have more detailed engineering drawings and plans as we move forward towards construction in February of 2018. But we wanted to come in front of you guys and show what we've been working on. Greg's done a very good job of really looking at, and our transmission engineer, to see what we could do to utilize our existing facilities. I really appreciate the time, and if anybody has any questions.
One more silly question.
No problem.
And I go down 95th Street, not as much as Judy does, but what do we have at 95th Street of yours now?
Along 95th Street going.
Between 2nd and 3rd, near the water tower?
Near the water tower. So they're the steel poles?
No, is there any kind of structure or any kind? Yes. Where the substation
Yeah,
was?
so-
What is there?
So there's nothing there right now. You're saying on that property?
Right.
So basically, it's set up for if we need to bring in a mobile transformer, that we call it. So it'd be basically bringing in a trailer that has a transformer
Yeah.
on it. So it's a mobile substation. So it'd be like a Piermont to help if anything ever happened and we needed additional capacity or anything like that. But we don't anticipate anything like
See,
that.
we all just learned something. They didn't know either.
Okay.
There you go. I don't even know what's sitting there.
You just said we don't need that, though. You just said we don't need
If,
that, right?
if it's there for operational flexibility, just like some of these feeder ties, if anything would ever go wrong, obviously everybody really is dependent on electricity, so it's really our last thing in the back of our pocket, so.
The 2 additional poles, are they going to be at 45 feet also?
That's what they said.
What do we set those at?
Yeah, I think they're actually maybe a little bit shorter, because they're gonna be in between the steel poles.
Okay.
So we can get you the final details on those but I believe it's at 40 feet. It may be a little less.
I think
But
it's 45 with
is
the
it?
decks.
Okay.
We're not attaching to all the conductors when we set those poles in the existing line. All we're grabbing onto is the bottom distribution conductor and then a new proposed conductor above it. Transmission will actually span completely across it. So we are limited in our pole height at that location because we're gonna be mid-span on transmission. We can't go much taller on wood, otherwise we violate clearances. So we clamped that down. It should be around 45 feet, if I remember correctly.
We're going to just open it up to the public
Sure,
for questions, and
sure.
we don't have to wait till the actual public comment portion. So if anybody's got a question that they want to ask the folks from Atlantic City Electric before they leave.
And Judy, I'd just like to thank Atlantic City Electric for coming forth and starting us off way before you're starting the project.
Question. Do I have to give my address?
Name and address, Mr. Reddy,
Um,
please.
Social security number?
Hopefully, I'm not next to a new pole. I just want to clarify, last October, when you came to council, you were talking about going down First Avenue. So that's out, right? There's nothing going down First Avenue. That's, okay, that's not an absolute answer. You said that's not your plan right now? Okay, so there's, other than those two poles, there's nothing else going up?
And along 81st Street, there'll be some pole-for-pole replacements, but
Okay.
no new poles.
All right, and then on the two new wooden poles, it may or may not be on private property.
That's correct. I don't know if we've pursued those rights yet, but we're not 100%.
And that, and to pursue the right, you would have to negotiate with the homeowner?
That's correct. If it was on private property.
If it was on, right. So, public property is anything from the sidewalk to the curb?
I think it varies in some locations, but I'm not.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to be absolute in this because you're going to go to a homeowners meeting on Saturday. And I will be shocked if you don't hear somebody tell you that you have scarred this island forever with those metal poles. I mean, it's the most god-ugly thing anybody has ever seen. Anybody's come down Second Avenue, went up Second Avenue to take a look at those, I mean, it's a disgrace. And I can remember you saying that you needed to do it to make sure we wouldn't have outages, et cetera. You're hedging your bets where you used to be on 95th Street, just in case you need a generator. And we've had the south end of this island underground for 40 years. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to tell us that you ever had to dig anything up. So, I mean, the poles are what they are. They're not going anywhere. But it's a disgrace. All right, but I'm glad to hear that there's nothing new coming. All right, and then you'll hear it at the meeting on Saturday.
And is your plan the same exact presentation Saturday that you just did? Okay, the same PowerPoint, okay. Anybody else? Specifically questions for Atlantic City Electric?
Bernadette Parzik, 9925 Sunset. So where do they end at 94th Street and Second Avenue?
Between 93rd and 94th Street.
And they just stop?
At that point, we transition down to the existing lines and pick up the customers from that point on. So,
You won't see any,
no,
it'll just kind of stop?
the line ends, there'll be a transition point, a couple sets of switches, but no, at that point, the current feed that runs down that route will end at that point, and then top deck will drop down and continue on for it. So essentially, we split that route into two equal pieces. And then there's some switching opportunities further down, but no, infrastructure-wise, that's all that we're doing. And we're
So
able to
nothing
switch.
crosses over into over 96th Street, or
Anybody else have any questions? Council members, anybody have any questions, need clarification? Okay. Thank you, and see you Saturday. Do we have any communications?
Yes, Mayor, we have a letter to our Beach Patrol. Dear Mr. Pizzacco, I am writing to thank all the members of the Stone Harbor Beach Patrol for the help they gave my husband when he was injured in the surf off 107th Street on August 15th. My husband was tossed onto his head by a wave. I ran to the house to get an ice pack and told my son to tell the lifeguards. When I returned in a few minutes, all the lifeguards had him mobilized in a very coordinated method to stabilize him in case of a neck injury and to get the emergency responders to him. I was very impressed with the organization, efficiency, and professionalism of all the guards. Their actions brought him to the help he needed in a timely fashion. Fortunately, there was no damage to his neck, and he was able to return to enjoy the beach a few days later. And this is from the Kaleisman family.
Good. Good work once again by our beach patrol. And up and down the coast, there was some problems this summer too. So kudos to our beach patrol and a job well done. So I need a motion just accepting the communication as read and entered into the record.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? At this time, we'll have public comment. Anyone wishing to address mayor and council may do so at this time by coming forward to the microphone and stating your name and address for the record.
Take it outside, great.
Hi, I'm Jeff Alderton at 10409 First Avenue. It's regarding the discussion that we had prior to this meeting with regard to all of the construction that's happening in town. I, for one, have been communicating with a variety of people in town, asking a variety of questions, and it's not just me, it's a bevy of other people who are doing the same thing. The issue for me in the discussion that ensued was that an ordinance is great if the ordinance is good. And in my view of the ordinances, and I'll give you a particular example, if we enforce the fact that you can work on Sunday, and we don't believe that working on Sunday is a respectful way in which this town should be operating, and I went to the builder next door, and I said, I wish you wouldn't work on Sunday, his response could be, sorry, I'm complying with the ordinance. So the ordinances in and of themselves need to be reviewed. It isn't just about being nice to the builder so he or she can be nice back. It is really, and it's not even a partnership between the council and the town and the communication with that of the builder. It is really about the respect of potentially 9 contiguous homeowners who are affected day in and day out with an ordinance that could be not respectful. That is the core of my issue. I can be nice to my builder, and by the way, I am incredibly fortunate of the building that's going on next to me. Excuse me. He is incredible. He washes my cars at the end of the day. He has put down blue stone to make sure there's not blowing of any dirt and sand. So there are also baked into things that I think the council should be looking at is the care and the feeding of a particular work site. Because that in and of itself, if we walk around town, some of the work sites are absolutely deplorable. Now, Councilman Parsik, you said if you asked all of the homeowners would say, no, I don't want any building during the season. I don't want any building on the Sunday. I don't want any loud noises past 6 o'clock. But if you asked a builder, he is going to say, yes, in order to meet the needs of my homeowner with whom I am building their home, to the articulate nature of Councilman Kravitz said, then he is going to say, well, I'm sorry, I need Sunday, I need to go to 6 o'clock, and I need to start at 8, and only interior, and I'm referring to the 4 items that Councilman Lane has identified with A&F. So you're in a stalemate situation. You have homeowners, of which there are 2,900 property owners, and you've got builders who are growing in rapid proportions, and 1 code enforcer. We also sort of learned that we may need to rely on the policemen, with whom their job and responsibilities probably far outweigh the need to control crime, to do all the things they should be doing, and not being code enforcers because the construction office is not open till 8:30. So now you have policemen being code enforcers from the time you close at 5 to the time they reopen at 8:30. And I dare say that I think policemen should be deployed more efficiently and effectively during those time frames. So my last suggestion is that I'm only asking the council to look at the homeowners, of which there are many, and the builders right now who have the opportunity to trump a homeowner because of the ordinance in and of itself. And to pit homeowners against builders, I think is going to be fraught with danger. And my hope would be that the council would recognize that putting a stake in the ground with even the 4 that were suggested, which I think we have somewhat agreed or at least discussed, that they are not hugely impartial to how a building will be done, that is the route that the council should take at its core. Because at the end of the day, it is about respect and care of the homeowners based on the ability of a builder with whom we respect to be able to finish a project for an owner, because I dare say that owner will eventually be subject to the same thing that the current people are being subjected to, and they wouldn't want to put in that position. So it's not a slippery slope. What it is geometric, and it allows everyone to participate effectively in the building and the growth of the community. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else?
I want to congratulate every one of the council people here on a magnificent display of an open discussion in front of the people. Thank you. This has not happened, well, maybe recently, small little discussions, but it's such an eye-opener. It's such a breath of fresh air to have people sitting up on this dais and actually talking to each other and disagreeing with each other. You're all good-willed. You all want to do the best you can. And I recognize that sitting out there. This is a hard job. But if you hash it out, you'll come to the right decision, hopefully. I don't think there's anything wrong in talking out. But today was just a magnificent display. So thank you, every one of you. And God bless America.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bunny, and thank you for recognizing that, because you're correct, it is not easy. So, anybody else before I close public comment? All right, ordinance 1503.
Madam Mayor, I ask that ordinance 1503 be taken up on second reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Will the clerk read the title only of ordinance 1503 on second reading?
An ordinance amending Chapter 1313, fees for the zoning office.
The public hearing on ordinance 1503 is open. The public hearing is closed.
Madam Mayor, I ask that ordinance 1503 be passed on second reading and advanced to third and final reading.
Second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Will the clerk read the title only of ordinance 1503 on third and final reading?
Section 345-24, fees of the revised general ordinances.
Madam Mayor, I ask that ordinance 1503 be passed on third and final reading, adopted and published according to law.
Second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Ordinance 1504.
Mayor and council, I make a motion that ordinance 1504 be taken up on second reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Will the clerk read the title only of ordinance 1504 on second reading?
An ordinance amending Chapter 5 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Stone Harbor balloons and aerial luminary. Luminary.
The public hearing on ordinance 1504 is open. Public hearing is closed.
Mayor and council, I motion that ordinance 1504 be passed on second reading and advanced to third and final reading.
Second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Will the clerk read the title only of ordinance 1504 on third and final reading?
Ordinance 1504, balloons and aerial luminary.
Mayor and council, I motion that ordinance 1504 be passed on third and final reading, adopted and published according to law.
Second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Ordinance 1505.
Madam Mayor, I move that ordinance 1505 be taken up on second reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Will the clerk read the title only of ordinance 1505 on second reading?
An ordinance of the Borough of Stone Harbor designating the Department of Public Works to install and maintain signs associated with the municipal public access plan.
The public hearing on ordinance 1505 is open. Public hearing is closed.
Madam Mayor, I offer that ordinance 1505 be passed on second reading and advanced to third and final reading.
Second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Will the clerk read the title only of ordinance 1505 on third and final reading?
An ordinance of the Borough of Stone Harbor designating the Department of Public Works to install and maintain signs associated with the municipal public access plan.
I think I just said that, sorry. Madam Mayor, I offer that 1505 be passed on third and final reading, adopted, and published according to law.
Second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Resolution 2017 S191.
I believe that's mine. I'd like to offer a resolution 2017 S191 for adoption.
Second.
This is the lease that we have with the Chamber of Commerce. It's a 5-year lease. It begins in September of 2017, and everyone has a copy of it. And are there any questions?
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Resolution 2017 S192.
I'd like to offer Resolution 2017 S192 for adoption.
Second.
This is a resolution authorizing an agreement for shared services for the Chief Financial Officer Services for the municipalities of the Borough of Stoughton Harbor and the Borough of Avalon.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Resolution 2017 S193.
Madam Mayor, I offer resolution 2017 S193 for adoption.
Second.
This is to purchase a 25 RL King Cobra trash truck through the National Joint Powers Alliance, and it's for $195,082.75, and the money is in the budget.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes?
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Resolution 2010 S-194.
Mayor and council, I lost my place. I offer resolution number 2017-S-194 for adoption.
Second.
This is to express the borough's favor in support of a statute that's been proposed by the state of New Jersey, which will allow firemen to take online training courses as opposed to attending classes, as is currently the situation. So the fire chief had told us that it's approximately 178 hours worth of courses, which makes it very difficult to get volunteer firemen to sign up to take voluntarily 178 hours of on-site courses where they can do it online.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Resolution 2017 S-195.
Madam Mayor, I offer Resolution 2017-S-195 for adoption.
Second?
This is a refund of a utility overpayment to Harbaugh Cottages LLC. The refund will be in the amount of $1,626, which was overpaid to the Water and Sewer Department.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes?
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Resolution 2017 S-196.
Madam Mayor, I offer Resolution 2017-S-196 for adoption.
Second.
This resolution is the appropriation of a emergency special appropriation of $100,000 involving our implementation of the master plan.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes?
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
Resolution 2017 S-197.
Madam Mayor, I offer Resolution 2017-S-197 for adoption.
Second.
This is in favor of the Department of State-managed J-1 Visa Summer Work Travel Program. There's concern that this will be eliminated by the present administration in Washington, and it will be definitely a detriment to resort towns such as ours.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Sorry.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Kraftcheck?
Yes.
Mr. Parzak?
Yes.
We have no items listed for discussion. So moving on, may I have a motion approving the bill list?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the bill list and authorize the CFO to pay the bills when the funds are available and the vouchers properly endorsed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This time, we'll have the second public comment. Anybody wishing to address mayor and council may do so at this time by coming forward to the microphone and stating your name and address for the record. Public comment is closed. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourned.